This is M-Wire, Movie Week in Review. M-Wire is brought to you by Audible.com. Sign up today to get a free audiobook download at www.audibletrial.com/geekcastradio. Start today with a free 30-day trial with over 100,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Don't forget to follow Audible on Twitter at audible_com. And now the latest and greatest in movies with M-Wire.
That's about the nicest thing you've said to me since the time I got my head caught in that cuspidor at the Waldorf.
That wasn't the Waldorf. That was the Astor.
Asta?
Astor?
All animals must go in the baggage car.
Oh, that isn't an animal. That's my fur coat.
If it can wag its tail, it goes in the baggage car.
Hello and welcome to M-Wire. This is episode 109. This is the finale to the Thin Man double feature triple parter that we've been doing here. I am your host, Fein and Mike. Joining me is Jeremy Fein. Hello.
You know, they saved the best two for last. I love these last two. You know, you're always scared with a finale, whether it be TV or movie, that it's, you know, okay, it's the last one we do, so what? But I have to admit, you know, last week I was a little skeptical, but this week, these last two movies did not go without a fight.
No, they didn't. And it's one of those things where I said before, from the beginning of watching these 6 films, they start off with The Thin Man, and that is arguably the best one of the entire 6, but they start off with giving you hints as to what, you know, home life is for Nick and Nora and how different Nick and Nora Charles are basically the definition of opposites attract.
Yeah.
Specifically because of his personality and her personality, they're like polar opposites. But it's, you know, the writers, the director, the actors, the actresses, they put it together so well. And what I mentioned in the in the part one of this triple part feature here is that after The Thin Man, yeah, it is after The Thin Man, we get to see her side of life. Well, coming up in this episode, we're going to get to see Nick's side of life, because The Thin Man goes home.
Be it ever so humble, we've got one of the most memorable Thin Man moments. Actually, there are several in this movie. I think the best is the train scene in the beginning with Asta, because they have to. She's tried to cuddle him up and pretend it's Nicky Jr. because we think Nicky Jr.'s back, and it turns out that he's in boarding school this time. So we have Asta again, and unfortunately, he has to go to the back. And the way that they have him, you know, Nick and Nora have to take him all the way to the back of the train, and of course it's crowded and then some. Now, I have never been on this type of train. I've been on Amtrak, and I guess you know, I've always seen these these passenger / cargo hybrid trains from Three Stooges and that, but this one was really interesting. I don't know, you know, during that crowd when Nick and Nora are trying to walk through, and people were just standing there, and all of a sudden, like, this guy is coming in the opposite direction. He thinks Asta's the baby. It's the way, you know. Today with comedies, they have to take a joke and throw it in our face hundreds of times. And this one, with them trying to take Asta from the front to the back of the train, the pacing is awesome. You know, it doesn't bore us. We want to know where they're going. They can stand there and talk. We can see how Murloy is trying to take Asta to the back. And when this other obstacle comes, you know what? It works.
Yeah, it really, really does. These train scenes, these train cars, I believe they had to cut through the dining car So that's why it was so crowded and hectic in
Oh
there.
yeah, that's right.
Um,
Yeah.
so the dining, yeah, you're right. Usually the rest of the train isn't this crowded, but the dining car, because it's how many people on on this train, and if there's couples and everything else, there's so many people. So the dining cars and scenes like this, are always going to be like that. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't even remember in my entire lifetime if I've ever ridden on a train. I honestly can't remember, but I don't know if trains today still are like this.
No,
Uh,
they've changed them over the years. I mean, thanks to Amtrak, they've made them a little bit wider. So
mhm.
yeah, they're not.
No, I mean like as far as having everybody in the dining car all at once and all everybody yelling and shouting and lo- you know looks like they're having a party. It's kind of like one of those old Looney Tunes shorts where they'll open a Bugs Bunny will open a door, and instead of you never know what you're going to get in there, but it might be an entire party
Oh yeah.
of live action people and stuff like that. So that's what that kind of reminded me of. The Thin Man Goes Home. Just to give some background, it was directed by Richard Thorpe. The story was done by Robert Riskin and Harry Kumitz, I think is how you say his name. Obviously, William Powell, Myrna Loy. Um, the music was done by David Snell. It was released January 25th, 1945. I wish Wikipedia would have. I don't know back then if they really paid much attention to the box office, but I really do wish Wikipedia would have the budget and box office listed to see, because these movies, we're looking back on them 80 years from when they came out. To us, they're great.
I got the
I'm
budget
kind of wondering.
actually.
Oh, do you?
Yes, the budget for this one was 1 million, which apparently was less because usually they were 2.5 million. This one was just at 1 million.
Hmm.
And it's the reason why this one took a little bit longer was because Murloy wanted to help support the Red Cross during World War II, and also
Yeah.
she was, uh, to marry the famous John Hertz Jr., as we all know, for the car rental empire.
Hmm.
Hurts, don't it? But yeah, she wanted to marry him. She wanted to, which was admirable. I mean, to support the troops, that was great. So
Hmm.
unfortunately, that's why this movie took a little bit longer to come out. But $1 million budget, today, I I think this would be like a $20 million budget. It's nicely shot. There are some great scenes, but it pays off.
Yeah. It pays off. Honestly, though, outside of William Powell and Myrna Loy, I don't recognize any names in the cast.
No, this is even a new director. We don't have Van Dyke in this one directing.
Yep. Yep.
Did you find it to be a difference or?
I I think the characters are still there because this one is solely focused on them and around, because it happens in and around Nick's hometown. But I think the director and the writers got their character. Like, I don't think like if you have the first four movies, most of them done by the same people as far as the production and direction and all this and all that. I don't think if by the fourth movie, unless you kept the characters, that it would be too much of a. I just always assumed it was all the same people. Honestly, I just watched the movies because I like the characters, I like the actors. Um, but I did kind of notice because they weren't in New York and they weren't in out in California that there's no Lieutenant Gill, there's no Lieutenant Abrams, there's not any of the characters that we would really recognize, and I think that's a good thing because it's one of those things where we've never seen where Nick had come from.
Yeah,
You know,
here's the thing. We're finally going to meet Nick's father, and it's about time. I,
hmm
for some reason, thought that he had passed away. I don't know why Nick hadn't talked about it much, but it's a typical. I think one of my favorite moments, and as I said, there are several, but one of my favorite is how Nora loves a good Thin Man interrogation, and she talks about a case to Nick's father, and she's really getting into it. I don't have the dialogue in front of me, so I don't remember everything he'd seen. But she's like, she's starting off slow, and she's like really getting into how Nick was able to solve this case, and how excited she was, and how everything's exciting, and you could tell. And Nick's father's just sitting like he's getting really scared, and he finally ends the conversation like, well, why did Nick go through all that? He could have just done this and that to solve the case. And you can tell the father's not impressed. Now, I can say, all the movies and TV that I've seen over the years, you always have that moment where the father is never going to be proud of the son, or you think he's not, because it's either tough love or the son doesn't, it's always a miscommunication between the two. I relate to this movie because my father was, towards the end, a principal of a junior high school, and I tried to become like him. Couldn't happen. And it was very, very hard and very tense, but at the end we patched things up and we got became stronger over it. And that's how this movie is going to be. We're gonna find out what makes Nick, and his mother, unfortunately, I'm kind of disappointed. I was really hoping she would kind of be a little book smart. We hardly see the mother. And she's just like there for the sake of being there.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't even seem like she had much to do about it. It was more about Nick and his father than anything else. And I will say that The Thin Man Goes Home was more enjoyable than Shadow of the Thin Man. But at the same time, I don't know.
I do. You know what? The Thin Man, Shadow of the Thin Man, to me, I wouldn't say so much it's the Batman and Robin of the franchise, but it kind of is, because like Batman and Robin and bombed because there were just too many characters and not enough plot. And I think they wanted to bring the people in for the sake of bringing them in. This one is a stronger case, and this one we find out why the person is doing it and how the comedy works. And they realize that as much as one of my favorite moments is like a former criminal goes to jail and he gets out and like, wow, Nick and I are the best of pals. And Nick, of course, shrugs it off, and Murroy just like, being snobbish or whatever, being Nora. And that's great. They don't do it in this, but you know what? It's tighter. It's not traveling as much, but it works.
Yeah, it does work. It works very, very well. I think one of the reasons, and this might just be me, one of the reasons why I felt like I had seen a lot of this movie before has nothing to do with the actual movie. It has to do with part of the plot of it, where it's, hometown. They've got to find out who did what and what did who. And I don't know why, but this reminds me of this entire plot of this movie reminds me of the scene in Phenomenon, 1996 John Travolta movie, where they have to find the boy. And they're trying to learn Portuguese, and that whole scene when they're looking for the boy in the tree. I don't know why this plot of this movie reminds me of that, but it does. So we have your standard Thin Man, plot. Somebody gets killed. Nick has to figure out who did it. And here it's a little different because this is all people he knows that he's known since he was a kid. So this isn't like complete strangers. For the most part.
I was afraid of one thing, though. I was afraid we were going to have that stereotypical when you go home, it's a childhood bully, and all of a sudden, he's grown up and they're trying to be friends. They didn't have that, thank God. But they did have childhood friends that are a little bit shady. And, of course, we have the town loony. And the biggest thing I was afraid of is was that going to work or not work? Because, I've seen this with hometown movies about going home in small towns, and you have to pick certain characters. I feel that every other comedy mystery, whether it be Encyclopedia Brown on HBO in the 80s, or anything that I can think of that's a comedy where they have these small towns, I feel that they must have watched a lot of Thin Man, because it's amazing that whether it be real Ghostbusters, Encyclopedia Brown, anything, these characters feel like I've seen them before, and when I go back and I watch this, I'm like, okay, now I know where they must have gotten it from.
Absolutely. What else do we want to say about The Thin Man Goes Home?
Well, as we know, where Nick, accidentally smacked Nora, it's always going to be controversial. Here, he spanks her, and here's the thing too. I understand why he does it because Nora, she does want to help. I always say, I hate to be repetitious, but she really does want to help. She just doesn't know how to help, and she does it a couple times the right way and then the wrong way. This time I think it just bothered Nick because he really didn't want to be involved. And what does he do? He takes Nora over his knee and he takes her rolled up and he starts spanking her, and you could tell it's amazing what you can get away with then. There's no way they'd be able to do this today. And
oh no.
But it's wait till we get to the next one. But yeah, I do really appreciate, again, the character actors, the way they mug, and the fact they're snowflakes. No two character actors are alike, especially Anne Revere as Crazy Mary.
Crazy Mary is the original crazy old cat lady from The Simpsons.
Yeah, I mean, I've known. I actually had a Crazy Mary as a kid. She suffered from dementia, and unfortunately, it was not funny. But she kept the oven on in her house, and I had to call 911 because she almost died in a fire. But this Crazy Mary is an interesting character because she's part of the plot. She has to be. It's a small town. Everybody's got to be a suspect.
Yep.
I will say one thing, though, is that I'm glad her story paid off. I just think it sucks. I understand the why and how she had to go away, but on the other hand, I don't know. I'm 50-50, but again, Anne Revere was awesome in this.
Yeah, she was. I love how this movie does the reveal. Because, okay, it's not a dinner party. But it's the gathering of everybody up. The only thing I feel is missing is honestly the town version of Lieutenant Gill or Lieutenant Abrams. That's really what I feel is missing.
And
because
Nora.
Oh yeah, that's right. She wasn't at the reveal, was she?
No, she wasn't. And of course we got Nora again, who just pretty much she's going to tell everybody what happens because she's been through this so many times. And then I like how she's standing in the background and goes, "Oh, he did it. No, I knew he did it." Like, again, this was an interesting one, but I think I really like the hows and whys over this painting because, again, I could go back to, and I never thought I would, Police Academy 5 with those diamonds, or even Short Circuit 2. Again, it goes back to the old switcheroo or what something's really worth. And in this case, it's a painting. And because you have something inside the canvas that is in the painting that they're trying to, smuggle, and the only way that you can do it, you need delicate surgical hands, and I'm thinking, okay, now I know who did it, but that's fine. I like the setup in this. And I love Nora. I love Nora. She's trying to tell this guy. She's trying to tell one of the police officers to just arrest that guy. Why? Well, he's leaving town. You got to arrest him.
Yeah, Nora is used to having Nick get away with everything to get crime solved, and in this town, that's not gonna fly.
No, and I love when she walks through the pool hall too. I mean, everything that Nora does again it's comic gold this time. I just love how she's just like she just walks through the pool hall and everybody's just like catcalling, and she's like, okay, whatever, and that's Nora for you.
Yep, pretty much. And you already kind of said it, but basically, the doctor did it. You said with this, you had to have precise surgical hand and everything else. So Apparently, the doctor, who is Nick's best friend or supposed best friend, actually really hated him because Nick was always better than him. It turned out to be a really standard plot, but it's wrapped around really good comedy.
Best comedy.
It really is.
It,
Yeah.
it you know, I get the fact of why, because at first I couldn't figure out with the fluoroscope, and then I was like, okay, so we have, specifications for this aircraft propeller that of course will be a great deal to its world, even though it takes place, I guess, in 1945, if it was taking place during World War II, it would have been sold to the Japanese and the Nazis. And back then it's believable and it's workable and it's doable, and we know who the murderer is and why, because he did give away one thing that I did pay attention to this time around, because as I said, this is a talking movie, we can talk during the movie. And that is when you have the good doctor and Nick going to Crazy Mary. They always have to call out to her because she has a gun. Well, this time they didn't call out to her because he claimed that, oh, well, I must have forgot. And Nick is like, would you never forget if she has a gun because she's crazy? So you knew that she was dead, and he killed her because she also has an interesting backstory. So he made a couple mistakes. That was one, and I picked that up. They usually don't do that in previous Thin Man movies, but this one at that point, I kind of knew, okay, it takes me a few minutes to figure it out. Like, they're so good concealing who it could be. It's the least likely. But as soon as Crazy Mary didn't reply when they went to visit her a third time, I knew he had to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think that's going to do it for The Thin Man Goes Home. We're going to take a quick break here to hear a couple of clips from Shadow of the Thin Man, and we'll be back after this.
Rampage of respectability persists, we'll have to buy you a bulletproof girdle.
So it is time for the final film in the series, The Song of the Thin Man. It's 1947. It was the last year these films came out. The budget was just over $1.6 million. The box office was just over $2.3 million. So this thing, back in 47, only made $1 million. I mean, it made its money back, but that was a little. That's interesting to me. Go ahead.
Yeah, it made its money. It showed it wasn't a box office bomb.
Oh no, I'm not.
It shows that it wasn't a box office bomb.
Yeah. So the this one, the final one, was directed by Edward Buzzell. Was produced by Nat Perrin. The plot of this is basically. A charity benefit sponsored by David Thayer is staged aboard the SS Fortune, Phil Brandt's gambling ship. The entertainment is provided by a jazz band led by Tommy Drake and featured singer Fran Page and talented but unsuitable clarinist Buddy Hollis. This is by far, this and the original, The Thin Man, those are my top two.
I wonder if it's
movies.
Supposed to be play on Buddy Holly.
Yes. Yeah, it was, probably. Song of the Thin Man and the original Thin Man movie are my two favorite out of the entire series. Song of the Thin Man was so good because it really gave you a finality to the series, because we finally see Nicky Jr. He's all kind of grown up. He's not just a baby anymore. And it's friggin' Sam from Quantum Leap. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? Ironically, he's in a Thin Man movie, and then years later, he would be a detective. And he's also, you know what? I liked him in The Longer Years, that Stephen King miniseries in '95. Wasn't as good as The Stand, but he was interesting to listen to. The problem, there's no problems with this one, actually. You know what? I take it back. I do want to apologize to the listeners because I thought he was in the fourth one. No, Dean Stockwell is in this one as Nicky Jr. But again, they don't know what to do with him. I will say that this one, this Thin Man movie, for some reason, again, I don't know why, but it feels like the third Die Hard movie where John McClane lost everything and he's trying to get everything back. And Nick really, I mean, he really doesn't have much in this movie. He doesn't have the police support. The way that he interrogates and reveals the murder is not in somebody's home this time. I mean, that's also a big one. And also, I feared for Nora's life. I thought, again, the transitions in this movie always screw with your head. I thought that she was going to die in this one. And you don't know where this one is going to go. And they try to make it comedic. The only thing that bothers me, like I said, how Nora got spanked. Nicky Jr. gets spanked because he dodges piano practice to play ball, which today would be a godsend to get kids to go out and play. But apparently they filmed this in rear endovision. I'm not quite sure how they got away with doing that. I understand that it's the editing when Nick is spanking Nicky Jr. You know, he doesn't want to, and he's remembering all the good times he's had with him. But it's still a very disturbing scene no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between this one and the last one where he spanks Nora. I mean, him spanking Nora, that's a husband and wife, and he's trying to teach her a lesson. Him spanking his kid, okay, sure, I know during this time period that's what was done. I think it worked. I think where the spanking scene works is the fact that the first part of it, he has a baseball glove in his pants.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't actually hurt him. And I love that Nora busts him for it.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Asta.
So yeah, I really did like that they that Nicky Jr. tried to pull one over on his parents.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I understand the house. I just keep going back to why Nick has to stare in his son's rear end to have those flashbacks. That's all. I don't know. It's disturbing no matter how you look at it, but it's even more disturbing because in, another Thin Man, we think he's going to be kidnapped, but in this one, we also think his life is in danger.
Yeah.
There are a lot of desperate people in this one.
Yeah, there are a lot. Yeah, very much so. And this one kind of reminds me more of After the Thin Man as well, because you have this whole club, and this one you have the whole boat thing, and the club in After the Thin Man was, there are a lot of shady characters in there, and there are a lot of shady characters on this boat in Song of the Thin Man. I think what endears this movie is the fact that Nicky Jr. is, a young kid now. I mean, he's not just a baby that they can use for plot purposes. And what's great about it is he and Asta have a relationship now. So they're actually doing something with Asta, which is interesting.
Yeah, but you know what? The only fear that I have is that, 20 years later, it would be a Hanna-Barbera cartoon like the Chan Clan. But they but it is funny how Asta, towards the end, or at least I guess the way they end it this time, because usually they'll end it where they're at house, they're doing an interrogation, solve the murder, movie's over. Here, it's Asta just cuddling up with Nicky Jr. They have that bond, which is great. But this movie also has, I want to trail for a second, it has one of my favorite character actors, one of the most underrated ones. That's Keenan Wynn, who plays Clarence Clinker Krause. He is one of my favorites. He is in a beach movie called Bikini Beach. He was in, the Great Race, I think it was. He's always playing the sidekick. Pretty much, I think it's the Great Race. It's the inspiration for Wacky Races. I got to look it up. But yeah, he was this great, awesome character actor. Yeah, it was the Great Race. That had that handlebar mustache at times, and that face and that voice. It was always recognizable, and to see him as a young man, I mean, he really is unrecognizable in this movie. But I
Hmm.
loved him. I mean, I was always trying to put that face together. And it's like, oh, it is Keenan Wynn. If you're not a fan of beach movies, and I can understand they're really corny, I do
Yeah.
recommend you watch Bikini Beach, because just to watch him and to see how over the top, or watch The Great Race. He's even in an MST3K episode, Laser Blast, as a man with dementia who's an old World War II hero. It's sad how I don't think it was his final film, because it was done, I think, in the late 70s. He's still a pleasure to watch.
Yeah. 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 I mean, this movie is one of those things where you have a complete family now. You've got the father, the mother, and the son, and the dog. I mean, that's what you have, and the way that they reveal who did it and why was probably the most interesting reveal since the Thin Man. Honestly.
It's not only the most interesting, it shows that Nick, who's always been cool, calm, and collective, we're seeing old school Nick. We're seeing a Nick that he's going to do everything because he has. It's not, I wouldn't say so much the Bat family, but it is a family nonetheless. And he
Mm.
is scared to death of what could happen to them, because he realizes that everybody knows who Nick Charles is. I mean, we've seen these movies. He can't go anywhere with somebody, either picking up a newspaper, looking at his face, going, "Hey, you're Nick Charles." I mean, he's equivalent to a movie star, which, of course, in our real life he is. But
Mm.
one thing I forgot about the last movie, there's this really bizarre woman who's, I think it's the maid, who's following Nick, and she goes, "I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I'd like your autograph." It's like everybody knows Nick, but now it's gotten him into trouble. Now he's not trying to make anything out of his name. I mean, he really does want to retire, but now he's going to have to find a way to. He's not worried about saving his reputation. He's worried about somebody who is a real threat, that he can't go to anybody, because anybody he can go to will endanger their lives. It's bad enough they're going after Nicky Jr. nor even Asta. He has to do everything on his own. He hasn't lost everything, but in a roundabout way, he's become so famous that he really has to buckle down, not drink so much, not be cool, calm, and collective. And you know what? It worked. And not only does
Mm.
it work, but I love how he's gotten angrier than I've ever seen. And
Oh yeah.
and I love how he'll try to be old school Nick. I think when he's trying to pretend to be a musician, and how they go to this secret jazz club, which is
Hmm.
great. It's got some great music. You have to be a fan of not only jazz, but you have to be a fan of these type of black and white mystery movies to really pay and really appreciate character actors, and really appreciate motivation, and who, what, and why. And this is more of a business proposal, and I understand what Nick is trying to do, because you have somebody who owes another person $12,000. We know that. We know that
Hmm.
if he doesn't pay it, his life will not mean squat, and he tries to get in advance, and you know, the promoter's like, well, it's a risky business because anything could happen to you. So, of course, we think the one who threatened this, up and coming jazz singer's life is not going to be worth anything. We have this other jazz band member who has a nervous breakdown, and he's in Poughkeepsie, New York at a sanitarium. We understand that everyone's life is pretty much falling apart because of something a little bit more realistic and a little bit more sensible. And I think that's why it's the most solid Thin Man sequel.
Absolutely. I mean that. Yeah. It just is because it's just so good. It's one of those things where every single scene there's something you need to pay attention to in this movie.
And everything makes
Um,
sense.
exactly. Honestly, I don't think things have made sense since the beginning and since after the Thin Man. Like, not this well done. Um, which is kind of funny because, you know, W.S. Van Dyke, who directed the first two films, he passed away in 43, so they had to find new directors, new people to do these movies, which, again, what I was trying to say earlier in The Thin Man Goes Home is that as long as the new regime, whoever that may be, as long as they stay true to the characters, as long as, you know, as long as they don't swap character traits, like, you know, we know Nick Charles as being, you know, a detective. He's, you know, a functioning alcoholic. He loves his wife, but he's not afraid to put her in her place when she needs to be put in her place. He doesn't have those, which I assume at that time would be, he doesn't have the traditional male assumptions about women. He says stuff every now and then that might be a little risque, but if if the new director or the new writers or whatever came in and changed that about him, it wouldn't have the same charm that it had the first few times around. And as I said a few moments ago, I think that it's one of those things where it comes full circle here with them having the entire wife, husband, son, and dog. It comes full circle. I love the scene where Nicky Jr. says, "But Dad, your stories always put me to sleep." Well, and you can tell when Nick looks at him, you can tell Nick wants to, smack him. Not that he would, but it's just one of those things, kind of like when he would pretend to threaten to hit Nora in a couple of the other films. And it's one of those things that just makes it so magical. Even though we know as the audience he's not going to hit his son, with the exception of the spanking scene. It's just very heartwarming to watch this movie. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I was always scared with having kids, either in TV or movies, like, in a few seasons later, a couple movies later, because they usually water everything down. Like, I'll throw an example, like something I Love Lucy, where she got pregnant and you have the kid now. Well, now you have to write dialogue for a little, wise ass kid, or even because when Nicky Jr. was in this at first, I was about to roll my eyes and figure, okay, they're going to put in canned laughter or something. This might as well be on TV. But he's hardly in it, and when he is, the timing works. I mean, they got the right kid, they got the right dialogue, and they got the right pacing. So I was actually okay with that. But again, it's just, I don't know what else to say other than it's a real solid send-off. And yes, I understand that W.S. Van Dyke had passed away, and it was very hard to try to bring in somebody who, would respect these two characters. But I also felt at this point that William Powell and Myrna Loy had worked together for so long that they pretty much knew how to play off of each other. So I didn't know if you really needed to direct them, because they knew how to talk to each other, and we knew what Nora was going to do. Yeah. And not that it was a bad thing. I mean, I've seen a documentary with these two, and you know what? I almost forgot. I've seen Myrna Loy in two other movies with Cary Grant that I love: Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House and The Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer. So she had that timing, charm, and William Powell, of course, was the gentleman's gentleman. It's just, I just, the only thing I can say is that I just love the end scene, how Nick is at the jazz club and he just brings everything out, and he shouts out loud why the murder took place, who the murderer was, and how everything kind of gets wrapped up and everything will be back to normal. I guess they could make a seventh or eighth one at this point. I mean, even if they wanted to go into the 50s with them, they wanted to do other projects, of course. And we, there is that DVD of the documentary where I have of these two, where there's a radio drama that they did together. Mm-hmm. And the TV show, even if they wanted to do it, I don't know how many other mystery movies or, stories They really could do. I mean, there's only you want to leave the party before it leaves you, and that's the irony about this movie. It ends with a big party, and it leaves with a big bang. And
Mm-hmm.
there's only so many ideas you could have, and then I guess if they would have done a couple more, they probably would have aged up Nicky Jr. a little and
Mm-hmm.
had Nick and Nora as cameos as the grandparents now. I don't think it would have worked though.
No, this movie and this series lives on as it is. Song of the Thin Man, for me, like I said, it's probably my second favorite, but we'll get to that here in a few minutes. Honestly, it ended with, like you said, with a bang. It it didn't end like I thought it would. I mean, because I figured, most of these, Nick wraps everything up in a nice little pretty bow for everybody to go off and go to jail and do whatever they have to do. This one kind of left the plot not necessarily open ended, but it left it where, who knows? We can assume that she's going to go to jail for shooting the guy. But it's just one of those things where you just don't know what would have happened afterwards. And I'm really glad that this was the last one, honestly, because I don't think, even if you didn't use William Powell and Myrna Loy, I don't think anything, if they ever try to remake this series nowadays, or even back then, if they tried to, like you said, pull it into the 50s, I don't think it would have worked. I honestly don't, because from 1930 something to 1940, was it 1934 to 1947, those were almost 10 years. It was 8 years in that time that those movies were able to be made, and that's really all we need, honestly.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of the Marx Brothers movies, and I had a book, and you know, you read why some of the movies after Day of the Races was going south, and it's because they still wanted to work, and Chico needed to work because he had to pay off gamblers, but the
Mm-hmm.
stories were getting lamer, and Hollywood even said we were running out of ideas, but Harpo and Groucho just wanted to work with Chico because he had to pay off gambling debts. But you could tell that they were getting older and tired, and they just couldn't keep up, and they couldn't just show up for the sake of showing up. So I think six is a nice number, and even though in the
Mm-hmm.
50s we got a show, ironically, 50 years after Song of the Thin Man in 1997, these films were added to United States National Film Registry, being deemed culturally, historically significant. And you know what? I have no complaints. And I know in 2000, the AFI stated that these were one of the greatest comedies of the previous 100 years of cinema. And you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I have no objections. Comedy doesn't always have to be a pie in the face or a dirty joke. It's just it felt like it was on a feather, and it works.
Yep, absolutely. We're going to take one final break here. We're going to come back with final thoughts. And instead of giving it the traditional GCRN Universal Star rating, we're going to rank the films in order of least enjoyable to most enjoyable. So we'll be back after this.
Hello, geeks. Want a podcast that covers a vast array of topics with no rhyme or reason? Then check out Altered Geek Unlimited, where the topics fly more or less off the cuff. We cover media news, TV, our favorite geek products, and of course, your feedback. So get altered, get geeky with the Altered Geeks every Friday on the Geekcast Radio Network.
All right, we are back here on Movie Week in Review, and it is time to rank the Thin Man films from least enjoyable to most enjoyable for us. For me, I am going to start off with Shadow of the Thin Man as the least enjoyable. It has some good lines, it has some good moments, but it's not the best in the series. Another Thin Man would probably come next, because while I did enjoy it, it just wasn't what I was hoping for, I guess. The Thin Man Goes Home comes in third place. again, I love seeing Nick's side of the family. I thought that was great. And that hometown feel, and basically getting Nick to become emotional dealing with his father. And then comes After the Thin Man. It's a nice little sequel. It's really really good. It's interesting that the Christmas guy was the villain. Who would become the Christmas guy eventually. Number two the second most favorite of mine is it's got to be Song, because the song was just so great. Like I said earlier in this episode, it had everything going for it with the family dynamic and all this and all that. And of course, the top one is the original, The Thin Man, because that to this day is still the one that I can quote the most. What about you? How are you going to slot these?
Well, I don't think you need to bring 50 people in the room and have me give it away. I think we pretty much know that Shadow is on the bottom. And I want to just say again, the air was let out of the tires. They really, really tried, but you're going to have one turkey in every franchise, and this is it. As for the next one, After the Thin Man, it's a young, unknown Jimmy Stewart, I suppose, but I never could get past the title. It tries to be the first movie, and they try to make it unpredictable. It's worth watching, but it's 50-50. Then, of course, we have Another Thin Man, which is actually one of my favorites. It's great. And, of course, as we go down to the final three, for number three, it's going to be Song of the Thin Man, because I don't know why. I keep putting this next to the third Die Hard movie, where it's like the hero loses everything once to gain everything back. But no riddles. It's got a great character actor, as I said. It's got a great plot. It's got Nora's life in danger. It has rear-end vision. But at the end of the day, we come down to the final two. Now, of course, you would think I would say the original, but I have to go with The Thin Man as for number two, because The Thin Man goes home, as I said. It not only has that homey feel, this is one of the reasons why I love living in the country, and how things are laid back and they haven't changed too much. And you have some bizarre characters every now and then, like a Crazy Mary. But the other reason is that I'm still near some old antique stores that have paintings like this. And it's, I mean, you know what? It was even bizarre. I go to an antique store and they have the Addams Family cereal selling for $25. But it's amazing what's an antique. But my point being is that it just has that good old country feel to it. And I just love the relationship of fathers and sons, of how proud I am of you, and that Nick is so proud he bursts his buttons, and it works in so many levels that, and the ending with what they said with that, I think it is the service as Mr. Charles, I want your autograph. Everything just pulls out, and it's probably one of the best Nick Nora relationships that I've seen in any of the Thin Man movies. So those are my picks.
Yep. All right. I think that's going to do it for us here on M-Wire episode 109. Briefly, what have you got coming up on Hunnick Outcast podcast?
Oh, well, tonight, Wyatt and I are going to discuss Ultraman, because, as you know, Power Rangers may be making a comeback, and, of course, Shout Factory is releasing the inspiration for Power Rangers. We're also going to talk about a kaiju that's really neat and made of meat, Gamera, because he may be coming back in 2015. We don't know how, with Star Wars and everything else. And, as you know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is coming out of their shell tomorrow. I got my ticket. And not only am I going to be writing a review on Geekcast, Wyatt and I are going to be discussing our favorite turtle moments and movies. So we got a lot. And, of course, we have something planned for 2016 because, as you know, we all know what the release date with that Batman, Superman movie, Dawn of Justice, is now. So the Ides of March, we're going to be starting to discuss our favorite DCAU movies and worst. So it's going to be interesting, to say the least.
All right. Coming up next on M-Wire, we've got episode 110 with Doug Abel from Talking About My Generation and I talking about the 1999 remake, The Thomas Crown Affair. We do also mention the 1968 original starring Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway. I love the 99 version. I really do. So you'll hear that, and then after that, I'm not sure what's going to be coming up on M-Wire. So keep those film reels rolling, and we will catch you next time.
Don't worry.
I wouldn't go through that again if you had twice as much money.
You've just listened to Movie Weekend Review on GeekCastRadio.com. If you would like to leave feedback on the show, there are many ways to do so. First, you can visit the website, GeekCastRadio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. Be sure to rate our show on iTunes and leave us feedback. You can follow us on Twitter at GCRN MWire. Become a fan of us on Facebook by searching Geekcast Radio Network. You can email us at feedback@geekcastradio.com. Call the voicemail line 502-526-5821. Please remember to tell us the show you're leaving the message for and your name. So until next time, unleash the geek in you.
In a world, there, I said it, happy,